Hi guys, Sarah here with Doing Daisies. Today we'll be making a Farm Fresh Eggs stenciled sign, and I'll be using reclaimed wood to do this. The size of the wood that I've cut down is about 8.5 by 5.5, and I will be using some shelf liner that I picked up at the Dollar Tree to make the stencil with. What you're going to need for this project is, of course, some reclaimed wood. As you can see, this has a bit of a curve to it, and that's from weathering. That's okay with me. I'm not going to have any problem using this wood. I think it just adds to the appeal of the sign, the age, the handmade look. So I love that. And of course, the Dollar Tree vinyl, which I've already gone ahead. I don't know if you can see where I've used my Silhouette Cameo to cut the stencil that I'll be putting on here. I haven't peeled it off yet. If you don't have a cutting machine of any sort, a Cricut, a Cameo, then I will also have on my blog a PDF file where you can trace and cut it out using the vinyl and go ahead and place it the same way and finish the project that way. That won't be an issue. Now, what I'm going to do, instead of using my transfer paper, for the people that don't have any transfer paper or a cutting tool, and you're going to be doing it by hand, I'm going to show you how best to do this. So the first thing I am going to do is I am going to take a tool and I'm just going to peel out the parts of the sign that I don't need. Now, if you are just using scissors and cutting it out, of course you're going to have to be very careful with your placement. So there is a slight disadvantage there. You will have to be careful with the center of the letters, and that would be your biggest placement issue. And I'll show you what I mean here in just a second. Again, as I peel off the A, you can see that centerpiece right there. That you're going to need to keep in place on the wood, on the stencil separately, so that you have that center point for your A. And again, with the R and so forth, you're going to have to keep all those pieces. So you are going to want to be careful with that. Right, so let me go ahead and finish peeling off this stencil. Now, I am using a tool to peel off the inner part of my stencil. If you don't have tools and you do need to do some weeding, you can use a sharp pair of pliers or anything you have that's tiny around the house that's not too sharp, because you don't want to damage your stencil. Okay, so there we have our main stencil that will be going on our sign, Farm Fresh Eggs. Now, I'll be painting this just in a black is the color I chose to do it. And I'll just, once I get this placed, I will show you a trick to keep your lines nice and crisp. Now, in order to place the stencil on the sign, what I'm going to be doing is peeling off along the top here. Alright, and I will be placing it right along the top of the sign and just kind of getting it down and with a nice even pressure. And then I'm going to start pulling down gently on my the backing, and just using my finger to kind of push that down as it goes. Oops. Right, and you do want to be careful with the bottoms of the letters, because you don't want to tear those as you go. So there, you do have to play a little bit in order to get this laid out in this manner. Alright, but as you can see, they did lay out fairly well there. You just have to take your time and be gentle. It's not something that you want to go too fast with, especially if you've taken the time to hand cut all this. Okay. And it's normally just a little bit easier. I am just trying to not get my head in the way here of the video camera. So I'm at a slight disadvantage not looking directly down on the piece here. Alright, so we've got that down. Now, what I want to do is come back in, there we go, and lay out the centerpieces for the letters. I just want to get those in. And the last piece comes down here, just separating out those chicken feet. Okay, so now that you have those down, what you want to do is just be sure you've got a nice tight seal on the wood. And you can do this using you can lay some wax paper down over it. You can use your fingers like I'm doing. And just be sure all those pieces are down nice and firm on the wood. Alright, now for the next step, and this is the trick to getting your lines nice and crisp and clean. I have here on my paper I have just some black acrylic paint, and I have some Mod Podge. So what I'm going to be doing is just using my finger, just because that's how I do things, and you want to put a nice thin layer of Mod Podge over the edges of where the vinyl meets the paper. Alright? You just want to go all the way around with this. And what this does is this seals, gives you a nice clean seal where the vinyl would not quite adhere to the wood, being a porous material. So this is an absolute, not a must-have, but if you want those crisper lines, this is the trick to getting those nice, beautiful, clean lines. And you don't want it on real thick, which is why I'm using my finger. I can kind of judge the thickness. I can work with it a little bit more. And finger painting is fun, so why not? Now that I have the Mod Podge on all the letters and everything, and it's had a chance to dry, I am going to go ahead and take my cosmetic sponge and my black paint, and I am just going to start dabbing onto the stencil. Of course, if you want to use a brush, you can use a brush too. I just like using the cosmetic sponges on the stencils, at least for the first coat, just to be sure that nothing seeps under the stencil. And this just gives a little bit gentler coloration. You can add the paint without having to worry about tearing at the stencils at all. So I'm just going to go ahead and get this. I'm going to do 2 or 3 coats of it, and then we will let it dry and go ahead and peel off the stencil. Alright, now that the sign is dry, I'm going to carefully peel back the stencil. You can see how nice and crisp those lines have been left. Oops. That we'll go ahead and fix up. We'll just keep working at this stencil till we get it off. I will tell you, with this reclaimed wood, it is tending to pull up a little bit. some of the piece is wood. So let me try pulling it this way rather than across, even with the grain. And that might help us. Alright, there we go. Everything looks pretty good. There's this little tear here I can repair. Now and I can touch up where some of that came off with the grain. Okay, and we just need to pull off these centers. Go. Alright, and as you can see, for the most part, everything is beautiful, nice, crisp lines. Here in the H, there's a little bit that kind of came over, and again on the E and G. So I'm just going to come in with a tool and kind of scrape those down a little bit, even those out. Again, those are fairly easy to clean up, having had the Mod Podge laid down over it. It's not really soaked into the wood. It's not hard to get scraped up and cleaned off at all. Alright, now, where this big piece came up for some reason, I'm just going to take a little bit of the Mod Podge, that over, seal it down. Alright, and then I have a much smaller area that I need to go in and kind of tidy up. I'm just going to go in with a very small brush. Oops, and I did forget to take off this piece, didn't I? Go. Just going to take a tiny bit of paint. And just touch up any little spaces that you see that might have not come out quite to your liking. And I see just a little bit more here around the edge of the chicken's wattle. Let's clean that up. Getting right up above his beak. Right, so there you go. And then the other thing that I noticed is right down here, I got a little bit of paint on the edge of the sign. So I am just going to come in and sand that off. Trying to be very careful not to hit that chicken's foot there. Looks like maybe just a touch there. All right. Doesn't look like I was quite as careful as I could have been with the sponging on here. There we go. All right. That looks pretty good, I think. So there you go. There's a nice little country style farm fresh egg sign on reclaimed wood. Turned out really well, and again, the big secret to the nice crisp clean letters is doing a very thin coat of Mod Podge to seal your wood and your vinyl together. All right, I hope you guys had fun. I will see you later. Bye-bye.